All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in. We got an awesome panel lined up for you today. My name is Christina. I work on the marketing side at the Hip Hop Education Center. And this panel is closing out Autism Awareness Month, which of course is the month of April. And this is coming out of our Fresh, Bold, and So Deaf initiative. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to our host, Jamila.
Peace, peace. Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited about this topic. This is something that I live and breathe and work really hard to share and discuss. I'm Jamila Yasmin. I am an educator. I've been educating children with autism for over 20 years. I am also the CEO and founder of Bright Eyes Productions and Heaven's Girl Entertainment. And today we just wanted to make sure we ended Autism Awareness Month, supporting parents, moms in particular, of children on the spectrum. We want to talk about all the things from finding out that your child, discovering that your child may have autism, all the way to how do we support them in transitioning through life and graduating from high school and going to college and all in between. So we have a great panel here for you. We're going to go through introductions. Everyone's going to just introduce themselves and tell who you are, and then we're going to jump right in. So I'm going to pass the mic to Rachira, and we can go from there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rashira Jones. I'm a mom of a 8-year-old young lady on the spectrum. I'm also an entrepreneur. I am the owner of Closet 12812. I do a lot of e-commerce on various websites, Poshmark, eBay, Tracity, etc. So I work from home and super homeschooling mom.
You're going to pass the mic to Yvette.
Peace, everyone. Hi, my name is Yvette Hidalgo. I'm a mom of two. I have an 18-year-old going on to college. He's graduating high school. And I have my 9-year-old Sonny. He is going to be, those are my two boys. I'm an arts manager and I'm a cultural producer. And so I'm a very busy mom. I am doing remote learning from home, and that's been an experience that doesn't make me want to go into teaching, that's for sure. But yeah, and learning and just navigating his life right now is pretty much where I'm at. So I'm grateful, and I pass the mic next.
Hi, I'm Lauren Berkowitz, and I have a son who's 18 years old, who's on the spectrum. I'm an educator, and I'm also an arts educator as well, and a photographer. And I'm really excited to be here. So I'm really happy to be on this panel with everybody tonight.
All right, we're going to pass the mic to Pri.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pri, stage name Pri the Honey Dart. I am a lyricist, music producer, a member of the hip hop collective, The Anomalies. I am also a photographer and visual artist, and I founded an organization called the Creative Youth Society, where I teach youth dealing with adversities, creative skills for creative careers. And I am also the mother of a son who's on the spectrum, who's sitting right next to me. He is 29 years old, and he is also an artist and also into music. He grew up in music as well. So yeah, so I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to see everyone here.
All right, peace. So let's get into the discussion. You know, I have been working with children, like I said, for over 20 years, and I started out with infants and early intervention. And I had the wonderful opportunity to watch children grow and watch their development, and then identify some things that they may not have been hitting on their milestones, and talking to parents about early intervention services that we could provide, and eventually diagnosis. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about what that process was like for you. You know, how did you find out that your child was on the spectrum? What was that like for you? What did you notice? Did you go to a doctor? Was it in school? You know, so like, what was that experience like? We're gonna start with Rachira. You want to share?
Yes, hi. For me, it was when my daughter was around maybe about going on 2. I say about 2, and we realized that she wasn't really vocalizing much. She wasn't really giving too much eye contact, back to me. And that was when I decided to, and the doctor, to have her tested, and to start early intervention. That was at home. They came in the home and they did a lot of ABA. We did a lot of outside play to try to bring the language out. But actually her language didn't start to come out to maybe about 4 years old. And I believe that's because we put her into a specialized preschool, it was called like a therapeutic nursery, where they use a lot of music to help with the vocalization, and they use a lot of sports to help with the physical. And that's when she really started really blossoming, and she probably didn't start talking to maybe about 4, maybe about 4.5. And that's when we got her retested for the turning 5. But we went and we took her through New York Presbyterian. We took her to White Plains, which is New York Presbyterian, the Center for Autism and the Developing Brain. And they did a lot more extensive testing on her. And that's where it kind of started for me. I can pass the mic, but as far as a mom, I didn't know like what this was going to entail with my job, with my time, with right now, how much is this going to take out of me to get her the services and the time of the services that she needed to be there. And I felt that I wanted to be a part of it because I needed to learn also, rather than to just send her and kind of hear from a sitter or someone else, kind of like how she's learning and, what's really going on hands-on. So I was very hands-on on being at just every appointment and every therapy. And I pass the mic to Yvette or back to Jamila.
Yeah, really quick, you discussed ABA therapy. Do you want to share what that was? Just for the audience to know. So ABA is applied behavior analysis, but what was that like, the actual process at home? What was happening?
Well, the process at home had to do with a lot of sensory, because she was very uncomfortable with stepping on certain things. Like she would kind of like, she had a lot of sensory issues, even with walking around and feeling comfortable with touching certain things. So it was a lot of textile things. So they would come and we would do play where we would play with things that were uncomfortable for her to feel, strange for her to feel, but which was normal to us, like say feeling sand or playing with beans or just kinetic sand, which is in our world of special education, where it's like a gooey kind of sand, but it helps with, getting her used to different textures and things that made her comfortable within her space. So we did a lot of compression of the body and just trying to help her find her balance within her own space.
Great. Okay, good. So Yvette, you want to chime in and say how?
Definitely. Hi. Yeah. How I found out was he was a preemie, so he was born at 32 weeks. So when he started around a month old, we ended up getting physical therapy to help him, develop just his body himself. And then at around like 9 months, I started noticing different things as far as like he wasn't crawling, and this was all home services. So when I was home, which was great because I was able to figure it out right away that something wasn't right. And I started asking questions, and she was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's evaluate him. Let's get him started at 9 months. About that process took a little bit to get someone to come through. We had psychologists to come through and meet with him. And then finally at about 12 months, 14 months, we found out with going to like the neurologist, and then the results from the psychologist said that he had PDD NOS at the time. That is what the diagnosis was. So at that moment, we, it was something that we had to figure out. And my father-in-law happens to work for the school system, and he was aware of a lot of directions and information. So he was able to inform us and be an advocate on that side, because I had no idea that what I was going to face. But basically, ABA definitely helped. Early intervention is very key. Early intervention has helped him. He's 9 years old now, and if it wasn't for that moment of just witnessing those little changes of looking at the lights, any little simple sensory, any movement is the moment that you have to reach out and ask somebody. It's okay. It's not a problem. Don't be scared, because that was one thing a lot of people don't want to ask. My baby's not holding this. It's okay to ask. But yeah, next I pass the mic to Lori.
Before I had my son, I had already had a background of working with children with disabilities. And I had a year-long experience with an 11-year-old boy who was nonverbal and was on the spectrum. And so I and also worked with a verbal child as well. So I had the experience of understanding and knowing signs. So when my son, similar to Yvette, I started noticing some things. My son didn't babble. He was a happy baby. He was very content. He slept all night. He was very easy considering being an infant. But I just noticed he didn't babble, whereas more some children develop like those early language skills of doing mama, mama, or just sounds. I was noticing something was a little off. He was seeing actually my pediatrician. So he was a little old school. And every time I tried to push the pediatrician to be like, listen, I think there's something, no, he's fine, nothing's. And so I said, I kept waiting. So every time we'd hit like a time to go see him, I would say, I'm still seeing things. And he's having more and more temper tantrums. He's getting very upset. He doesn't point at things that he needs. There are certain milestones he's not reaching. And then finally, I asked to see another pediatrician in the practice, and she immediately referred me to a pediatric neurologist when he was 2 years old, who, explained to me the importance of a diagnosis classification and how that's going to help us further along in getting services. And with that, we got the early intervention. And this was in Connecticut, and it was birth to 3. And it was really, they came to the house, and he had very intense, also ABA, really working on social skills. There were a lot of behavior stuff going on. And again, it's that adaptive learning and all that. Which was really important, and safety. We were really worried about safety. And through that, he went to an ABA preschool, which was public, which we were very fortunate to have within the school system we were in. And it went from there. And I immediately, as a single parent, really jumped in and did a lot of research. And at the time, the mercury poisoning was a big topic, and is this what's causing autism? And so I was very adamant about maybe I should get him tested. So there was but there wasn't a lot of conversation around autism or even children with disabilities altogether. So I immediately became an advocate and very involved in the community as much as I could in raising awareness. So I'm happy to be here today.
So Pri, you're up. Let's hear, what was your experience with diagnosis?
Well, what happened with my son, when my son was an infant in the crib, you know, he was doing he said, I think he said dada first. He didn't say mama, he said dada first. So he was doing the, you know, like he was doing all of that. But what I did notice about him was that he would line up his teddy bears in order. And I thought that was extremely interesting as a child inside a crib. Like I would come into the room and all of like the teddy bears were like in a specific, you know, like going up into an angle. And I, you know, and I was young. So I think I was like 21, like 20, you know, like he was my first, you know, I was clueless or whatever. But I just remember that particular thing. And then the dadas and the mamas just stopped and they changed to sounds. And at first I thought he was deaf. So I took him to the doctor to have him tested, his hearing tested and everything. And then they referred me to other doctors and then he was diagnosed. And when they told me, I had no idea, you know, what it was. No one had ever mentioned that to me. I didn't know what autism was, spectrum. At that time, when he first was diagnosed, it was autism. And then later on down the line, it became Asperger's. And then it became speech. Like it went to these various stages. He was nonverbal up until around, I want to say 6, like somewhere around 5 or 6, he started. And what I did with him was I started teaching him art and music and started communicating him. I started teaching him how to draw so that he can show me what he needed. And then I started teaching him things like Photoshop and Flash. And then he started discovering animation. And so he would be up, like when he became 5, like he would literally be up all night. And then I would wake up and there were like full animations on the computer. And so, but he couldn't really speak, but this was like something that he was like extremely into, Disney. And I think it was the process of realizing that what you create can come to life. And that became like a thing for him. And so I used that whole realm to, you know, kind of guide him, teach him with, speech and trying to get him to communicate more. And then I got a dog named Etta, rest her soul. But when I got that dog, he became more verbal. So I think like the dog mixed with the music, mixed with the art, like all of these things came together and he became way more verbal. And then eventually he just started, you know, communicating. It was hard, you know, because, you know, even though he was able to communicate, there were certain phrases that you use that would confuse him. And, you know, and when you have autism or something like that, a lot of people don't realize it. So they'll just talk to you or they'll just like assume that your child, you know, understands exactly, you know, like will respond the same way their child responds. But, you know, my son was very, very, sorry to be talking about you. Okay. My son was, very, very, he was very, very specific. He had a very strong vocabulary because I spoke to him, like I said before, I spoke to him like how I'm speaking to you. So I used large vocabulary words when I spoke to him, and he had a photographic memory. So we would put like a movie on, like a Disney movie. He would watch it maybe once or twice. And then after that, he could act out the whole movie with his back facing the television. And his father and I would just sit there and just watch. Like it was like our entertainment, like we just watch this whole thing, like
Days, right?
yeah. And so
Yeah.
that I started learning more about autism by researching myself, because no one really told us anything. And then I realized when your child is placed in school, it's like this one thing.
Mhm.
Like, and then
Well, that leads me to the the whole topic of what is autism, right? So autism is a broad range of conditions characterized by challenges with social interaction and communication. So children experience, it manifests in different, in everybody different. So like there's a saying, if you know one child with autism, you know one child with autism, because everyone's different. It's just a social communication condition that it makes it challenging for people with autism to communicate and to socialize. And so with that, it also makes it difficult for parents to identify and to even notice certain things. And so one thing that you guys all mentioned was that you notice things early. You were able to use your own understanding of your own instincts on what the child should be doing, and that maybe you felt like it wasn't quite happening. And another thing I noticed was the advocacy. You all advocated to make sure the child was tested, and like Lori, even going past the doctor, like, you're not meeting my needs, we're going to go a little further and investigate. So that is key. So I just want to move on to, because you started going to the schools, Pri. So I wanted to talk about that part. How did you navigate the school system? Because as we know, the schools are required to, you may know, but I'm letting the audience know, there is something called IDEA, which is Individuals with Disability Education Act. And as a result of IDEA, there are all sorts of laws, federal laws protecting children with disabilities in school. And so that means that parents need to really be aware of what those things are to really advocate for their child. And one of the most important things is that they receive FAPE, which is fair, appropriate public education, which is very important because, and Pri will talk about this a little bit more, because she advocated strongly for her son so that he can earn a diploma as opposed to a certificate, and that allowed him to go to college. So that's very important to be aware of. And then the other thing is the IEP, which is the Individual Educational Plan. And that is the document that is like your Bible, and it is legal. And if the school does not follow that document, then they are responsible for providing, for making sure that services are provided. So I want to talk about that part with you guys. We'll start with Shira. What was your experience when you first started with school, and did you come up with any challenges? Did you face any obstacles, and how did you overcome that?
We got a lot of help from the JCC. So, which is the Jewish community. That's the school that my daughter went to. And through the JCC, although they are public, I did find some alternative schools that were for independent children. But I knew that at this point, my daughter was talking and that she can do it. So the IEP situation for me, when she started kindergarten, her kindergarten teacher has said to me, look, she's reading very high functioning. We want her to take the gifted and talented test. Now, mind you, she didn't start talking till like maybe 9 months prior to that. So she took that test and she scored a little bit lower than to go into a gifted and talented class. But at that point, I had found out that they do have specific classes in the public school. I can only speak for New York City, where it's called the NEST program. And they came to my daughter's class and they observed her. It's a specialized, I guess, special education class for very high functioning children. So they actually pick, like kind of cherry pick the kids that they particularly feel are very high on spectrum. So my daughter was chosen for that, which helped her to be bused out of our community and go to an out of district school where there were a lot more kids who were very bright, but just had more social, emotional delays than academic delays. So she still now is just doing really good academically. I like to say, like my daughter is very into drawing. She just draws all the time, and she's very into animation. She also has that photographic memory where she watches a cartoon and then she can just draw it, you know? So we have her into coding. We have her into things that normally some children whom are on spectrum, you know, it's just, that's why they say every kid is not the same. My daughter is very high functioning. She is a hugger. She doesn't know her boundaries, you know? So to have a girl, we were afraid, like she would hug the waiter. She would try to hug a taxi driver. She would, you know, want to give a kiss to someone she didn't know. So we also had those kind of things going on that we were afraid of just in general, you know? So IEP meetings, I kind of at that point educated myself on, I knew her strengths. So I knew what she needed. I knew that she needed to be in inclusion classes, you know, to where she is not the most low functioning, but yet she's not the most high functioning. So she can kind of find her space and we can see where she blossoms to. And I just always follow the IEP. I always track it. If I feel that there's something on there that I feel doesn't represent my daughter, I will ask for her to be retested. I will say, you know, maybe it was just a bad day for her, you know, and you just caught her on a bad day, because sometimes they will test your child and document something just, you know, just on how they were that day. And with autism, you know, sometimes she's just not feeling it. That doesn't mean that she can't do it. That doesn't mean that, you know, environment and comfortability, a lot of things come into play when it comes into testing our kids. So.
Thank you. One thing that you mentioned was that you focused on her strengths and you encouraged her gifts, and she's gifted and talented. These are words that you don't typically hear with children on the spectrum. And it's very important that parents know that just because your child has a diagnosis of autism, that isn't a prison sentence. That doesn't mean that they have to be in special ed self-contained classes for the rest of their life. It's just about what your child's superpowers are and what their gifts are and how the autism manifests with them. And we're going to handle this child based on their needs. So it's really important. Yvette, you want to go and share your experience with just navigating the school system?
How I started was, like I said, he was young already. We did the program, which was Los Niños. And Los Niños is something that helped us get him from 2 years to 3 years, get him prepared to go to a different setting. And that's where the ABA programming was. It was a portion at home. And that programming set him up for vocabulary, for able to just get him to the next step. He was able to then get into another program, which is from 4 to 5. We went to VOA, which is the Volunteers of America. That was more of a classroom setting where he was able to integrate with other children as he was getting older, preparing him for the regular school system. He did great where he excelled. Again, every year it's a different learning opportunity for him. So while he was growing, you then figure out, okay, where is he going to go next? And that time, when he graduated kindergarten, he excelled quickly and decided, okay, well, he's going to go into a regular classroom. But that was the biggest mistake. But we don't know that until they go there. So we go into a public school system. We're very lucky that we were in this local school system that that was around the corner from home. So it was something that we were able to, because he recognized these areas, everything. He's into graphic arts, he's into theater, so he's animated, and he always wants to know everything, every sign. So he knew that that was the school building he wanted to go to. So that was that school. That didn't work out. The classroom the teachers were not prepared for his personality. They said he was too distracting. So that was a good year of fighting with the IEP, trying to figure him out from a regular classroom, trying to put him into a smaller classroom where it wasn't working. So then that ended up getting him graduated into the NEST program, which is actually the Horizon program. And then the Horizon program opened up for him for a year, and he went to another school that was testing. They went to the school to evaluate him. So the same thing that Rashir is discussing was the same process that we went through. And now navigating that, he's now in the NEST program, and is giving him opportunities because we figured it was behavioral. So between the NEST and Horizon, those are two different types of programs within that program. So we didn't know that until once again we were at a school that was well prepared for it. So it's been going to different schools, and currently with COVID in place, he ended up graduating from his class setting into NEST, which is now the next step into middle school, and he hasn't been into the school now, to the new school. So he's been remote learning, and transitioning has been something from day one that he's suffered, and he still does. And so we're navigating a 9-year-old. So it's something that we're still in that phase. But one thing that has helped us to take him out into the community was this place called the Front Door. And it's a New York State program that has allowed us to take him and to be part of the community. So we take classes, we make sure, because we have to make sure that, whatever he likes, we help him. We take arts for him. He wants that, let's try it. He doesn't like sports, hey, let's try something else. So it's always trying to be able to teach him. And this Front Door Services was able to help us. And it's allowing us to financially give us the opportunity to take him and facilitate being part of the community without a problem. So yeah, these are the things that we're navigating into middle school, 4th grade. So
and that's very important. What you talked about, the transition, right? A lot of times we parents just don't know how to support the child as far as all the educational learning that the child would need just for any little transition. And sometimes we won't expect it, right? So for me, it's like, oh, as a teacher, maybe we are supposed to have science, right? But something went wrong. So we're not going to have science today. We're going to have social studies. So now we have a problem. People are like, wait a minute, hold on. But if you prepare and let them know, like, okay, we're getting, sometimes things happen. We have a little change. So just knowing the type of things to support, what type of support you need to put in place to make sure that they feel comfortable and their anxiety is lower. Those are all learning and growing. You're learning and figuring out as his mom and as the school and the teachers what it is that he needs to be prepared for. And like you said, having teachers who are prepared for him and know what to do is also very important, right? So Lori, especially for you as a mom and an educator, right? How was that for you, that experience? Because I'm sure it was not easy for those teachers who had your child when he came in. What was your experience like?
Well, I was ready to play ball. And my son, just like mostly everybody else here, he too did not start speaking until he was 4. And with that, how do you, if you're just learning how to speak, how do you learn to communicate your emotions? And a lot of the social emotional is a real big impact. So when he went into kindergarten, he went into public school and this was in Connecticut. and he was in an ICT style classroom. But we saw a decline in his social skills rapidly go down. So I kept saying in the IEP meetings that, you know, listen, this is just going to get progressively worse as he gets older, and it's going to affect him in his academics, and the class size is going to affect him. I ended up in second grade moving him down to New York City, and they didn't honor the Connecticut IEP. And so I found a school in the East Village that was small. It was a charter school. It was a small school. It was close to my where I was teaching, where he could just go, and it was a very small classroom because they had low attendance. They had low enrollment, excuse me. So it worked out into his benefit, but the bullying started, and his struggle with academics and getting work done and concentration started to decline. And in that year, I got him on Fidelis Healthcare, which was really a big, because we were waiting on the DOE to come and do their evaluation, speech, OT, and their neuro eval, which they didn't actually end up doing until a year to the end of the school year. So I had already went ahead when I got him Fidelis and got him a private evaluation. And once we had that private evaluation, it's like, you know, it's like the golden ticket. And when they finally did the evaluation, they didn't know my son. They got 15 minutes, 10 minutes of watching him and getting feedback from teachers that hardly worked with him. And that private evaluation really pushed a lot of things along. However, because we live in a district that's very small in Manhattan, the place where he was placed in our district, which is Upper Manhattan and Washington Heights, the school is not prepared. Even though they say they have ICT classrooms and they have supports in place, that doesn't mean the quality and whoever the principal of the school is following through. And that was our experience for 2 years. And you know, I was just playing like, let's get him into the system and let's play their game. But unfortunately, it was at the expense of my son. And he was having a difficult time. And when the counselor that he's supposed to be seeing and supposed to be pushing in into the classroom is calling him lazy, that was when I said, okay, I'm going to go the private school route, which I had already investigated when he was in kindergarten. And with that, I kind of said, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this as a single mother, but I'm just going to go for it. And it, you know, he went to the Cook Center, which is now the Cook Academy. And there at that meeting, they said, don't worry about that. And they gave me a list of lawyers and advocate programs. And they said, you can, and I cold called all of them. And I said, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? It wasn't until I got to the Legal Aid Society that they helped me because of my income. I was, you know, I couldn't pay for any of that. And with that, I got legal services, which really helped him get into the private special needs schools. And just like Pride, I too at one point was like, okay, so now we're in high school, and even though he's in a great private school, what are you going to do for my son? And I know Pride's going to touch on that, but I too was like, you know what? You can't give him a real diploma. It was only an IEP diploma. I pulled him out, and now he's at the Ideal School of Manhattan. He's graduating with a real diploma and going into CUNY in September. So I too need a lot of support with that. That too, I am still trying to navigate. And, you know, he too was involved in a lot of capoeira. He's at JKD. He does Muay Thai. He's very involved. But again, the team sports was always a struggle. And that, again, is that social emotional. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I could go on and on about suing the DOE and waiting for my stipulation to get passed over. But anyways, yes. That's it.
No, I was going to say, this is like so important to talk about, because a lot of times our children get caught in the school system, and we know about the school to prison pipeline. We also know that special ed children make up the majority of the inmates. You know, they become adults, and because they can't communicate, social skills, whatever, they end up in prison, right? But the advocacy of moms, like what we do to represent our children, is what sets the tone. It makes it different, right? And so I want to encourage anyone watching, anyone who may have a child going through this, you are the advocate. You are the person. Find out what you need. The biggest thing we're going to talk about in a few minutes more, but just about the disparity between Black and brown children and low income. If you have no money and you have no advocates, you don't have any knowledge, you don't know where to go to get support, the school system is not helping you, it can be very challenging. And so kudos to you guys for advocating. And so Pri, I would really want to hear your story, because it's really extraordinary, because if you did not advocate for your son, you know, would he have what he has? And so I want you to tell the story about how you realized you needed to put him in a different setting so he can actually attain his high school diploma.
Yeah, so what happened was, like I stated, I was young, so I wasn't really familiar with the IEPs. You know, in retrospect, you know, as I look back when I became older, I realized there were a lot of IEP meetings that happened without me that I wasn't aware of. You know what I mean? And I realized that later on when I started looking through the documents of the past, and I was young, like I didn't know meetings were happening. I didn't even know what this thing was. And I didn't realize the magnitude of what an IEP is when the child is in school and starts going into high school and then wants to go into college. And I didn't know that the IEP, the degree that they received was basically a certificate, an IEP, like, you know, like just like an IEP degree. You can't go to college with it. You can't get a job with it. You can't do anything with it. It's just basically like the certificate of attendance. And a lot of, especially those in you know, disadvantaged areas or areas of lower income, they have no idea that this exists. They just feel like, you know, they're putting their child in special education. They're going to get, you know, they're going to get this help or whatever, this, that, and the other. And in actuality, that's not the case, because once they get out, you know, they basically have to start over, you know, like they have to start over on their own as adults with no proper guidance while in school, not as far as the parents is concerned, but as in school. And how I found out about the IEP is I was on the phone with my son's guidance counselor, and I was talking about college, because, you know, I wanted him to take the, you know, they had like specific tests, like standard tests in order to get the high school diploma. And the guidance counselor was like, you know, college, that was his exact words, like college, like, you know, like, you know, and he was silent, like, you know, like, why do you want your son to go to college? You know, I was like, yes, college. And he was like, oh, well, you know, this is his exact words, like, oh, well, you know, it's okay. You know, he doesn't have to go to college. You know, when I graduated with it, my mom moved me to Florida so that, you know, because they like, you know, they accept, you know, this, that, like he went into this whole realm, and I'm listening to this man, like this is the guidance counselor in the school informing me of this. And then a light bulb clicked, like, okay, there's a whole other thing happening that I'm not aware of. Like there's a whole legal process, there's a whole, you know, education, like there was this whole part that I literally was blinded by. And then once I found out, it was on, like it was just, and I know, like, you know, I was pushing him, and he had to take the test, and, you know, the studying all hours of the night, and like, why is this happening to me? And, you know, like all of this, but, you know, as I explained to him, like, you'll understand later, you know. And then like me, like, I didn't know all, you know, how they teach kids now with the new math, and I didn't know any of this stuff. And I myself, when I grew up, I was homeless most of the time. So I stopped school at 9th grade. I went straight from 9th grade to college. You understand? So it was like, when I went back to school, I knew like that whole realm of 10, 11, 12 math and reading, all of that stuff. I literally had to teach myself in order to teach him, in order for him to go take these tests. and then pass it. And so his father and I, we were like really focused on having him pass this test. He finally passed the test. And then he graduated. And then when he graduated, he was the only one in his class who had an actual high school diploma. Like everyone else had an IEP diploma or certificate. He was like the only one who had it. And it broke my heart because, you know, like the kids, they don't realize any of this stuff. They just think, okay, I graduated, and they're going to find all of this stuff out, you know, after the fact, you know. And then, you know, with him, I used that. He got into LaGuardia College, and I'm glad he got into LaGuardia College first so that he could kind of get the gist of what college life was like, because that's like culture shock. You're going from one thing to this, you know, like, and then from there he graduated, fine arts degree, and then he got accepted into FIT. So then he went to FIT, and then he got a communications design degree, and then he got accepted into the animation program. So he graduated the animation program. So he was able to go from IEP to 3 degrees. And, you know, this, and to me, it's like, had I not had that conversation with his guidance counselor, like none of this would have, you know, like none of this is a possibility, and none of this would have occurred because his guidance counselor said it to me in accident. And I had to keep calling back to school, like, what is that? You know how like someone says, you know, let me tell you what happened. And then he just stopped talking and you just don't know what the rest of the conversation is. That's how it was. Like, he was like, oh, well, you know, so forth and so on, you know, IEP, you know, don't worry, he'll be able to move to Florida. Yeah, like this whole, you know, like this whole thing. And I'm like, you know, no, not my child. My son, I knew what my son wanted to do. I knew my son wanted to be in animation. I knew my son wanted to be in some sort of creative field. And I truly believe that art, animation, creativity, music, all of these things are connected to autism. Like every autistic child I've ever met has some form of degree of creativity, design, engineering, because they think like they're geniuses. They don't, you know, us, we're just like, you know, living, you know, whatever. They are looking at detail. They are paying close attention to everything. These are the people that you want working for you because they will make sure everything is done specifically, and they will do it to a point whereas it can almost become probably to a boss annoying at some point, you know what I mean? But the fact of the matter is I really feel like a lot of parents aren't aware of the direction that they, you know, let the kids go, because, you know, let's keep it real. Autism means money. Autism has dollar signs attached to it. Anything dealing with special education has dollar signs attached to it. So they'll teach you just enough to not have you leave, you know, but have you stay. Because when he was in school, he didn't have a grade. There's this part where there's no grade.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You're just floating in these classes, and it's like this person's this age, this person's that age. And when he was younger, when he was to go to school, what they did was, I remember they had this meeting, you know, like, and I'm new, his father, you know, we were like really, you know, new to this. And, you know, they give you that, remember that, you know, the box with the square and the circle and the rectangle. And then they tell you, you know, put the, you know, the square, whatever. And my son had never had one of these before. And he was determined that this rectangle was going into this. And he was figuring out, he was like doing this. And because he was so focused, which is what happens, and he didn't speak to the woman, she was writing him off as behavioral. And so she was going to put him into a behavioral class. And when they took me to the class, the kids were jumping off the desk and they were fighting and carrying on. And I was like, no, like if you don't pay attention, they'll just put your kid anywhere because they don't want to deal with it.
That's really good that you're saying that, because again, advocacy and advocacy from a parent, there's a part of the IEP that is very important when they ask you what is your vision for your child's future. And if you start saying college from kindergarten, that forces that IEP team to look at you and say, well, if you want this child to go to college, then we need to do something different. And it's like, yeah, and the goals need to be appropriate, right? So this is really good. And so I want to move into our purpose here tonight. The main purpose is to advocate for inclusivity and tolerance. And you touched on, some of you talked about bullying a little bit. That's something that comes out. I know for me as a mother, you know, Yvette and I talk about this all the time. Growing up, you know, in the hood, somebody step on your toe, that's a problem, right? You ready to swing on them. But now you a mom and your child stepping on everybody's toes. You gotta like, hold up, wait, y'all gotta understand what's going on, you know? And so it's just really important to educate our community about autism and what it looks like. And again, the many faces of autism and what it is. So bringing your children everywhere you go and not being ashamed of the behaviors that they may have, and forcing people to, you know, ask questions if they have questions, and being able to explain it to them, right? A lot of times we don't get invited to the family's birthday party because they're like, oh, that's, you know, we don't know how they're going to be. But maybe if we invite them and you call me first and say, well, what types of things should I have in place? What do I need to do? Or what does he or she like or dislike, so that they can include them and have appropriate activities and things to that nature. So I really want to talk about that. Like, how do we as a culture, as hip hop in general, really bring awareness to what autism is, and how do we want people to interact and engage with us when it comes to bringing our children around in different settings and things like that. So we're going to start with.
Well, I don't know. I think I'm kind of always going to be like a helicopter mom, because I have a girl, and like I said, she's like super extra, overly loving, friendly, still kind of doesn't really know her boundaries. So in the community that we live in, I did some research, and I found out that at the local police station, one of the detectives, he had a granddaughter who was on spectrum. So he created a foundation for children in the neighborhood who may run away or XYZ. So I said, look, my daughter, not knowing, you know, certain things, dialed 911. She didn't know why. She's just, you know, being fidgety, you know. So in this climate, you know, that we live in, us being African American, you know, them coming to my door, not really understanding that there is a special needs child here, and you know that it was more of you know, a special need kind of thing that goes on with our children sometimes. And I found out that they had a program where I went down and I told them, I can write down when you come to my house, how to come to my house, the type of special needs child that lives at my house, how to talk to her, what are her triggers. You know, she may be nonverbal, she might be a little physical. So, you know, like straight off the bat, if you come to this address or you being called to this address, you need to come and understand that there's special needs children that live here, and you need to come and speak in a certain tone and understand the vibe of our environment. And I'm happy that they had that because, you know, she doesn't have a tendency to run out, but there are a lot of children that do have a tendency to wander. So you got to know how to approach that child. You got to know how to speak to that child. You got to know the triggers and you know, and the manner of how to just your physical presence. So that happened to us, and I just always worry a lot about our community and the understanding of our children and the understanding of, you know, tone and approach and everything matters to them, you know. So
yeah, I think that's really key what you said, that you went to the precinct and let them know, like, hey, we live here, this is what it is, so just don't come here guns blazing. We know, you know. And unfortunately, like you said, in this climate, that is a concern. You know, you worry every day just of not understanding the language of the police officers, you know. My mind a little nervous, I forget his name, young man was just recently killed. He had his headphones and walking and dancing, and then the cops kill him. So yeah. So Yvette, how about you? How have you been working with inclusion with your son?
Well, what recently happened was, first of all, he is very vocal. He'll tell you he has no filter, and he's a funny character where he'll tell you the story, and then you won't know until you start talking to him that something, is if something offensive comes out, that's when you'll know that it's not something that's coming out to direct you, to offend you. That's just something that is him trying to transition in his little mind. But recently what we learned was my husband went out to take him to a game park in Jersey, and he was jumping up and down, and he hurt himself. And the place had they had a lot of lights and music, and we never knew this, that he started getting anxiety because it was so much going on, and this is something that he was stuck. He didn't know how to communicate, and this is a child who always has something to say, was not afraid to tell you. And that moment, he ended up getting hurt. The staff was helping us, letting us know, whatever we could help you with, let us put them lights down. They were very helpful. But this, like I said, this is all new. Every day it's an adventure, because I didn't know he had problems with the lights.
Mhm.
Again, this was something that he vocalized.
It's like you
So
don't know until it happens.
Exactly. But these are the challenges that we face every day. But I that's why we're here today, to help each other and teach everyone about it. So I pass it on to Lori.
I just want to say really quick, we only have 4 minutes left. So I just wanted to really just highlight on the importance of understanding that, again, if you meet one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. And just knowing that autism is a social condition that is very wide, broad ranging. Everyone is deals with it and manifests differently with everyone, but mostly it's a condition that makes communication and socializing difficult. So knowing that a person has autism, if you know that it is going to be a challenge for communication and a challenge for socializing, you can give them grace and a little bit of patience when interacting. And to me, what's most important is that we look at people as individuals, and whatever they need in the moment, we try to be compassionate and we provide. I was just watching an episode of This Is Us, and the character did not have autism, but he freaked out with all the changes and things going on in the airport. And because he had been in the house and hadn't been socializing for years. And so he had a breakdown. But if we moved as a society from compassion and empathy and knowledge and understanding, I think that we would be better for it as a community. So just really quick, I'm going to give you guys just a few last words to close out what you feel is most important that you want people to take away. And then we're going to say peace and thank you guys for joining. So I'm going to pass it to Lori, and then we'll go to Pri, since they didn't get a chance to share this last section.
Thank you, Jamila. I really think we have to change the school system. I think the overall, I'm talking about in America, and how we approach education as a whole. I think that everything kind of trickles down in a sense. But also, more importantly, our educators have to become educated. And I truly believe that every educator should have a special education degree and be in the field and have practice and have an understanding. And with that, it serves the community, and that's the teacher's responsibility, or school systems responsibility, is to be part of the community and educate the community, as well as supporting the parents. So I would really hope and advocate for that, not just as a parent, but as an educator myself. in making those kind of changes, especially for marginalized communities.
Pri, you want to close out with your thoughts and what you'd like to
I just wanted to, make sure everyone understood that autism is not an intelligence issue, which a lot of people have a stigma with. Autism is a social and communication situation that happens, and a lot of people don't realize that, so they make jokes or or make certain references that that kind of like add a stigma to it. I think we need to bring more light to it within hip hop via music, and also have more community outreach so people understand exactly what it is and start allowing these youth and adults, because it's harder as an adult. When you get older and you have to start interacting, you have to start dating, you have to start meeting people, you have to start looking for work and all of these sensory things happening, it's extremely hard. And I think we need to create more groups where these individuals can come together and and have some sort of support base, because right now there really is no dominant support base, especially in the creative sector.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your time. We could be here another 2 hours and I would be all for it. So, but it's important to have these discussions within your community. If you know someone who's a parent of a child with autism, please reach out to them. They're probably struggling and lonely and need help and need your hugs. Sometimes it's nice to have understanding and compassion. And as far as the hip hop community, I feel like it's opening up. People are starting to share. I know Fat Joe talks about his son a lot. Faith Evans is now, a really big advocate for the community, and OT Genesis just won. And we know Genesis B, we love her, and she's repped real hard for the community as a person with autism. So thank you guys for your time, and
Thank you.
peace. Stay fly.